Okay, I'm going to work on this. Let me get my pointer option out here. Plants, fungi, move on to land. Okay, I don't know if you've heard of American chestnut tree, but they are really kind of neat and interesting trees. However, they got a fungus, and in 25 years they were dead. They almost don't exist anymore. When plants colonized land, they had some pretty hard problems to face, and we'll talk about that. A plant is a multicellular eukaryote. They're what we call photoautotrophs. They make their own molecules by photosynthesis. They live in terrestrial habitats where it's very different from water habitats that they had before, because again, there's lots of light and carbon dioxide, but they're available mainly in the air. And then you have waters and minerals, and those are found mainly in water in the soil. So there's a difference. And so again, they have different organs that will facilitate usage of these nutrients, and that is the shoots that are above ground and the roots that are below ground. And so again, here's a look of a terrestrial plant that we can see, and we've kind of already gone over some of these parts. And here is kind of what an algae looks like. And the trouble with the algae is it's kind of surrounded by everything, and we have these structures here that are more called holdfast that just kind of let them go there, whereas the roots not only hold the plant in place, but they also are responsible for getting nutrients, and we've talked about that before. Plants have a long association with fungi, specifically mycorrhizae, that help the plant absorb water, and they provide nutrients to the plant. And the mycorrhizae, the fungi, are nourished by sugars that the plant provides them. And so again, even though we have very fine root hairs in animals, these are further subdivided by the mycelia that help this. And so this here is fungus. This is another organism. So here's a case where we have an organism that's two different organisms really kind of together. We talked, we've had and we've looked in class at these things that we call stomata, the vascular tissue, and the cuticle, which is on the outside. And so the stomata are these holes that open up inside the leaves that allow air to come in. The cuticle are water and air impermeable membranes on the outer surfaces of things like the leaves. And then xylem and phloem are the vascular tissues that are responsible for moving nutrients from one part of the plant to another. And we'll talk about that. Again, the vascular tissue goes from the roots to the shoots and back again. Xylem is mainly responsible for transport of water and minerals to the roots and the leaves, and the phloem distributes its back. What we want to talk about is, again, this is a seed. A seed is actually the embryo, which is the organism, but there's also a lot of food in here, and this is the what we call the endosperm. And again, this occurs in a flower. We have the anthers and we have the female portion, and you kind of need to know all of those. Plants, we believe, evolved from green algae, specifically a type of organism that we call a charophytes. They kind of looked a little bit like this, kind of plant-like, looking leaf-like. In plant diversity, there's a number of different things. And this is the main graph that we kind of want to look at, and that will ask you. And so we have this ancestral green algae, which is a little over 500 million years ago. And again, we may or may not have some of these alive. We then saw the production of the bryophytes, which are the non-vascular plants. These plants can't get very large because they can't move nutrients from one part to the other. They need water in order to reproduce. Ferns and other vascular plants can get very large, however, they still need to be around some water. Gymnosperms and angiosperms, the naked seeds and the seeded plants, flowering plants, are a little bit different in that they don't require water to reproduce. They both produce a pollen, and they both use organisms to kind of move things around. And so that's very critical. In the next couple of slides, we'll do this. The bryophytes are, again, those non-vascular plants. They evolved 425 million years ago. The gymnosperms are 360 million years ago, 140 million years ago for angios. The great majority of living plants are what we call the angiosperms. They include our fruit and vegetable crops. There's over 250,000 species. And again, I do want you to know, be able to recognize this kind of plant diversity and what's going on with those. Those are the spore structures of the ferns. These are the ferns. That before was the moss. Here is a gymnosperm, and then the flowering plants. Bryophytes are most commonly mosses. We see this here. We could actually have a picture of our campus. There's plenty of mosses that are in there. We have the gametophyte, which produces gametes, and the sporophyte, which produces spores. Here's the sporophyte, this structure right here, and the gametophyte is this structure right here. Again, these this allows what we call alternation generation. And what's going on with the alternation generation is the gametophyte is producing gametes, either an egg or a sperm, and this is haploid. We then see fertilization, which is the diploid state. This then produces a sporophyte, produces a spore, and the spores are kind of released after they go through a process called meiosis, which then produces the gametophyte again. If you notice like this, and these organisms here, that the sporophyte is a greatly reduced structure. Ferns, on the other hand, are seeded vascular plants. They are by far the most diverse. They have sperm like mosses, which have flagella, so they need to be wet in order to reproduce. And basically so there's the spore capsule that they have here. Those are the fiddlehead. The carnivorous forests, which are responsible for the vast majority of our coal, and I think I have something I can give you. We'll look at that. The fossil fuels, and so again we'll go over this. The gymnosperms occur in the carnivorous. So again, these are organisms that can live and grow in very cold areas. They have a further reduction of the gametophyte. They have produced pollen that's borne by the wind, as well as seeds. And we have a diploid sporophyte. And so what's going on is, so the gametophytes that produce haploid structures are the dominant portion in the mosses, and it's less dominant in these guys over here. I don't think I'm going to actually cover that as much. Again, we do need to look at the female cones and the male cones. The male cones tend to be on the very edge of the trees. The female cones tend to be in a little bit more, and so we'll look at this is the ponderosa pine. The pollen grain is able to move, and then we see the ovule and germination. And so here's the particular seed that we have. This seed here, once the pollen associates with this, the pollen will come in and we'll have embryo occur. This is the food area here, and the actual living portion, the actual organism portion of the seed is this structure right in here. Again, the success of the angiosperms is mainly due to their efficient water transport and the evolution. Success of the angiosperms is mainly due to efficient water transport and the evolution of the flower. And the flower not only uses wind, but it also uses pollinators. We should know what the structure of the flowers were. We had a laboratory on that. Flowers come in many different forms. You are aware of that. And then flowers are essential for the angiospermite. Again, the vast majority of it is sporophyte, and we look at this structure here. And so a lot of our fruits and vegetables and stuff like that are parts of the angiosperm. The seeds are greatly reduced, and it's usually encased in some type of fruit-like structures. Fruit is basically a ripened ovary. It helps protect the seed, increases the seed dispersal, and it's a major source of food for animals. So they still have wind dispersal, they have animal dispersal, they have organisms eating it. Angiosperms are very important in our agriculture, and we do see an evolutionary relationship between animals and plants. Troubles with exceeding with human population is we are reducing the plant diversity. And so here's an example where we kind of burn stuff down in order to have farm fields that we grow stuff on it. Humans depend on plants for our food, our building materials, our medicine, our clothing, a whole bunch of different things. And again, here's some examples of the medicine that's derived from plants, and I won't get into that much. But again, losing this plant diversity is a very critical thing for us, and what we have to do is to be able to save this plant diversity. Fungi are important because they recycle vital chemical elements back into the environment, and through the mycorrhizae, they help plants obtain minerals and water from their environment. Fungi are eukaryotes. They're typically multicellulars, and they have a cell wall made out of chitin. And here's some examples of some. We have everything from yeast to molds that we have on there. And very interesting. That's a fairy ring molds that we have on there. They can even hunt. Fungi have unique structures, unique forms. Their nutrition is usually absorption, so what they do is they grow throughout the organism that they're eating. They release their enzymes, and then they take the materials back in. The thread-like filaments that make up fungi are called the hyphae. The hyphae are miniature threads of cytoplasm surrounded by a plasma membrane. The cell walls composed mainly of chitin. They have mycelia is just a collection of that material together, and here's what the mycelia kind of looks like. Mushrooms are just a collection. They're the reproducing bodies that we tend to see in extra. Fungi and bacteria are the major decomposers. Molds are important competitors with us for our particular food, grains and woods, and human-made materials. About 30% of the known molds make their lives as parasites, and so here's some of the Dutch elm trees kill disease. Ergot is another fungi that affects our fruit crops. About 50 species are known to be parasitic in human beings, and so they thought that the Salem witch hunt may have been caused by kind of chemicals that affected those individuals. Commercial uses of fungi, we use it to produce things like penicillin. It helps us to decompose waste. We produce bread, beer, and wine and cheeses from this. And so here's an example of blue cheese, mushrooms, etc. that we get from these. Here's the zone of inhibition that we see around a fungi. These mutual beneficial symbiosis lichens are again algae and fungi that we see in there, and they grow in many different areas. And so this is basically what the eukarya kind of look like. And here we have plants and fungi, probably protist, that are very close together. And that should basically